Hi, this is James with the RPG channel. Thank you for watching, and got a lot of information to cover in this video because this time we are talking about combat in Devil's Crossroad. So, in Devil's Crossroad, when your characters get into a fight, they will make attacks against their opponents using the same rules that we talked about in the first video. So, you want to attack someone, you make a skill check using the appropriate attack skill. So, say if you want to punch at someone, you would use the brawl skill, where if you're swinging a weapon or firing a gun or something like that, you'll use a different skill depending on what type of attack you're making. And the combat system gets interesting in the different ways that your characters can defend themselves from incoming attacks. So your characters will take turns in this game, like most other games. Like, you roll for initiatives and then you go in order of whoever got the highest initiative. But when you are attacked, you have an option to act outside of the normal initiative order. You can defend yourself immediately from the attack. So what happens when someone tries to punch or kick at you or make some kind of unarmed melee attack? Your first option here is to try to block the attack. To do that, you would also roll a skill check using the brawl skill, and if you were successful in blocking, then you've just successfully negated the incoming attack. Now, if the attack being made against you was unsuccessful, then you don't really have to do anything because, well, it's an unsuccessful attack. So, punch at you, you can block the attack. You also have the option of dodging the attack. And if you want to dodge the attack, rather than making a skill check, you use your secondary attribute, dodge, which is something that every character is going to have. It's probably not going to be very high, at least not as high as your skill scores, but it is an option that everyone's going to have. So even if you make your character not very fighty, you're still going to have defensive options available to you. So, someone punches at you, you can block the attack, you can dodge the attack. Okay, now in Western games, this doesn't happen as often as it does in other games, say like medieval fantasy or something like that, but sometimes people are going to pick up weapons and swing them at you. So this could be a hatchet, it could be a club, it could be an axe, it could be a cavalry saber. But if someone is making a melee attack at you with a weapon, then you can try to parry that attack with a weapon of your own, assuming you have one. So someone swings at you with a weapon, you can parry the attack, or you can also attempt to dodge the attack like normal. Now, if you try to parry the attack, you're going to use the weaponry skill, which is the same skill you use to make a weapons-based melee attack. But you can also try to block the attack. So this is where you're trying to defend yourself against a weapon, an incoming weapon-based attack, when you yourself don't have a melee weapon. And this is hard to do. This isn't a kung fu game or anything like that, so you're not going to have like people blocking swords with their bare hands or anything like that. So, since you're trying to defend yourself against a weapon when you don't have a weapon, your block score is going to be made at a +1 disadvantage. And so that way, if you're in a situation like that, you're encouraged to, get away from there or get a weapon of your own. Lastly, there are ranged attacks, and there are a couple of different skills that are used depending on what type of ranged attack you're wanting to make. So, like if someone wants to throw a rock at you or like hurl a chair at you or something, that would use the athletic skill, where if someone wanted to throw a knife, that falls under weaponry. If someone wants to fire a gun, that uses the firearms skill. And your options when it comes to defending yourself against ranged attacks is simply to dodge them. Like I said before, this isn't a kung fu game or anything like that. You're not going to be snatching arrows out of the air or anything like that. You're going to have to dodge that attack. And that's done with the dodge score, just like it is if you want to try to dodge a melee attack. The only real special consideration here is that dodging bullets is hard. And if someone is making an attack toward you with a gun, then when you try to use your dodge score to avoid that attack, it's going to be made at a +1 disadvantage. So dodging a arrow and dodging a bullet use the same system, but dodging a bullet is harder to do. Okay, so let's say a attack is made at your character and it's successful and you're not able to defend yourself. You're going to take damage. Damage is recorded in Devil's Crossroad on 3 different levels, depending on how serious the attack is and how much damage you've already taken. So the least harmful type of damage that a character can take is what's called bruise damage. Bruise damage can be gotten from like short falls, punches, stuff like that. Bruise damage isn't all that significant and it heals very quickly. Next up we have wound damage. Wound damage comes from life-threatening attacks made against you. Whether, you know, you're stabbed, you're cut with an axe, you're shot. So the very most severe type of damage that a character can take is called critical damage, and you probably won't be able to sustain very much critical damage before you die. And there's no attacks that directly do critical damage, but the way it works is if you suffer a type of damage for a category that's already full, then the damage that you would have taken gets bumped up to the next most severe category. So in the example that I've worked up, here's a character and he's going to get punched for 3 points of damage. Since this is coming from a punch, it is recorded as bruise damage. Well, say right after that the character is stabbed or something like that and winds up taking some wound damage. Notice that right now the character's wound and bruise damage are not interacting with each other at all. But what happens next is, say the character gets hit again and takes 3 more points of bruise damage. The bruise damage fills up and the leftover gets bumped down to wound damage. So if the character continues to take wound damage, it's going to be recorded on the wound line, but if the character takes any more bruise damage, then that's also going to get recorded on the wound line because the bruise line is already filled up. And in this way, if your character ever has to suffer damage once the wound line is filled, then it's going to start spilling over into the critical damage category. And critical damage is bad. When your character runs out of critical damage that they can take, the character dies, and unlike bruise damage, which is relatively easy to heal from, wound damage is conceivable to heal from. It's not necessarily easy or good or anything, but it's possible. Critical damage is very hard to recover from. That's a major life-threatening injury. So you want to avoid taking that if at all possible. So I know I had to go really fast for this, but there's just a lot of information regarding combat, and that's essentially the way combat and damage works in Devil's Crossroad. And I've tried to make this as pseudo-realistic as possible while still being entertaining. As I've said from the very beginning, I didn't want a game where a character is going to stand there and getting shot without any real consequences from it. I want this to be a game that really encourages your characters to behave logically in a gunfight. Like, they're going to seek cover, they're going to try to avoid fights whenever possible, and it's not a system that encourages characters to enter life-threatening conflict lightly. This is a very serious situation, and I hope this adds excitement to the game. And this has been James with the RPG channel. Thank you for watching.